out of nowhere, like they just blew up. They just went 0 to 100 million in like months.
You launched Vervaunt in 2017 and you've worked with many new age fashion brands.
I'll jump into Pangaia, but that was a bit of an enabler for us. Well, my wife was watching the Kardashians and every single member was wearing a Pangaia tracksuit for like pretty much the whole episode.
If you were to distill it down to 3 core reasons as to why that brand blew up so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the reason they blew up was...
You've equally now got over 50, 60 people. So what changed then in that?
We were like, we have 0 capacity. How are we going to take this on? I just had to accept that I'm going to hire 5 people. That ended up being like a massive catalyst for us being able to take on some of the brands that were kind of knocking on our door that we wouldn't have been able to take on without hiring. I've never had any sales people. We've kind of just grown organically, word of mouth. I've only ever looked at one number really, which is just net profit.
How do you make the decision to, okay, we want to invest in these areas of the business without it becoming a shiny object that takes you away from the main thing?
I always give advice to people in the industry, stay in focus, because I see it all the time. I did a million side projects. So I had dropshipping sites, I had affiliate sites, loads of other stuff. There was just a point where I just became like the most focused man alive because I just made so many mistakes.
If you were to be starting the agency today, what would you do differently to what you did originally?
I think I would...
Well, welcome to Agency Giants.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be on.
So you launched Vervaunt in 2017.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
And you've worked with many new age fashion brands, big ones like Represent and Pangaia. Presumably didn't start off with working with that kind of client.
No. I mean, to be honest, you say about starting business in 2017, so it's quite ambiguous as to when we actually started it. So I was doing like independent consulting, largely around replatforming projects. Back in those days, a lot of brands were wholesale only. So I was going in and like launching their D2C site, like kind of project managing it. And then Josh is my best friend. So he was working for different media agencies, and then we were working with a couple of brands and they wanted to like test D2C media and, like appear on search and shopping for brand terms, which before they just weren't present at all. So really low level, he started doing that on a freelance basis. And then we kind of realized that there was a bit of demand for people to just go in and like plan that stuff. So then we were like, right, let's go, or he needed to go full time. And we were like, we'll operate as like a little consultancy. And then we realized actually all the demand was for managing media. So we kind of pivoted the paid side to that, which at the time was a lot smaller. And to be honest, we really wanted the fashion brands and like the brands that we respected, but they certainly weren't. We got really lucky with a couple of clients up front, and we'll come on to Pangaia, which is a massive thing for us, and that triggered a lot of growth. But to be honest, we got really lucky. We got Lush really early, and somehow we were managing, hopefully they're not going to watch this, but somehow we're a team of like 4 managing their global media. And then all of our other clients at the time were like tiny, random businesses. And then the account started to grow. So I always, again, I don't know if I should say this or not, or like what I can say, but we won this penis pumps client. Which at the time was massive for us, like huge or pretty big spend, really interesting business. They had patents, massive like resale, wholesale channel. And then, that was kind of like a bigger account for us that kind of allowed us to kind of change how we operated. And then from there, we just started to pick up better brands, and then we just kind of doubled down on the fashion side. I'll jump into Pangaia, but that was a bit of an enabler for us, to be honest. So when we pitched it, it was funny because the guy that was there, who I still know now and really good guy, super smart, good friend, he was like, this brand is going to take off, like this is going to go massive, and every brand says that. And we were kind of like, do we think it will, blah blah blah. And then in the end we were like, let's just and it was tiny for us actually at the time, and it was a small fee, and it wasn't really clear what we were going to do, and they really struggled for like consistent inventory and everything else. But we pitch went terribly. The founder was just like not engaged at all. We were like, that's the worst pitch we've ever done, definitely not going to win it. Won it. And then out of nowhere, like they just blew up, to be honest. And they were just so well placed. They were so well connected. Great product. Great timing. And they just went 0 to 100 million in like months. And that, as soon as people saw that we were running the media, and the media did become pretty big, and they had a really good in-house team. Josh was basically working, my business partner, was basically working in-house for them. And that kind of catapulted us. And then out of nowhere, because at that point we'd probably been 6 or 7 people for 3 years, basically. We'd been going for 3 years and we had 6 or 7 people. And then out of nowhere, we had like some of the best, or like the best kind of contemporary fashion brands just contacting us, wanting to work with us. And then we had a few others like Pangaia, and then that kind of kickstarted things, really.
That's amazing. I know. I want to unpack how you leveraged that case study, because it sounds like that was the catalyst to a lot of scale. Definitely. I want to hold that thought just for now, so we can come on back to that and revisit it. But going right to the early stage of the agency, like what was the time frame between working with the smaller brands to working with a big brand like Pangaia, or at that stage not big but too big?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, so Josh, I mean, it kind of all happened at once. And I think before this, I was saying to you, like, I think Vervaunt has always been pretty scrappy, and the kind of ops side for a long time kind of was our lowest priority to an extent. And we were a lot more focused on how do we deliver really good work? How do we build like advocacy with clients? How do we, just organically make people want to work with us? And I feel like, to be honest, at the start, Josh was still delivering a very high proportion of the work. And it wasn't like Josh and I had gone into like founder mode and started operating differently. Like, to be honest, even to this day, Josh and I are so in the day-to-day. So I feel like Josh and Bethan, who I imagine we'll talk about a lot, we hired, so essentially Josh is number 2 in his team from one of the Wavemaker. So we hired her early, and those two had both worked on accounts spending millions a month. Josh had 0 discipline. Bethan had a lot of discipline. Like, she was kind of, between the two of them, they could manage an account of any size, I'd say. So whilst they were working on, really small kind of multi-brand retailers and everything else, I feel like we were kind of ready to manage a bigger account. And got lucky with Lush. I'm trying to think, the penis pumps client was a larger spend client, but I think, we had what we needed to be able to, it's not like we kind of grew up, if you see what I mean. I think those two were very used to working with larger accounts, and then we just gradually kind of flipped the smaller clients for bigger ones, and that's kind of how we've grown, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Was there an outbound acquisition system at all?
No, so it's interesting you mentioned Pangaia as well. So again, we've never, I think, and this I always have, whenever I talk to agency people, I think one thing that we've always been like super proud of is like, we've never had any sales people. We've never tried to grow. If anything, Josh and I were always very resistant to growth, and I'd imagine we'll come on to that as well. And we've kind of just grown organically, word of mouth, clients moving around different brands. But actually now it's, as you know, we started working more with IDHL, who have got a big commercial organisation and everything else. I almost feel like in some ways we're quite naive, because we're so we prioritise working with the brands that we like love and respect so much, and we've just kind of waited for those brands to come to us. And it's almost like, I wonder what if we had a really good kind of salesperson that worked in the same way we work. Actually, we probably would have been a bit better at getting the top brands, to our events, or, kind of opening those conversations. But equally, a lot of our clients say the thing they love about Vervaunt versus some of our competitors is we're just completely non-commercial, which has pros and cons, I would say.
You say you're resistant to scale.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I mean, to be honest, so Josh and I are just wired to think about, I think, team and client. And it's been, I would say, every agency owner would say, or most would say, it's a really stressful thing to do and be involved in. And I think for both of us, particularly me, the stress comes from the idea of a team member or a client being like really disappointed in us, or us not delivering, or thinking that we're not operating in their best interests. And I think basically we hired Bethan. So she came in, she, again, big challenge getting her into the business. She's like the opposite of Josh and I, very structured, quite professional. Like, I mean, someone we really needed in the business, but probably not the obvious fit at the time for her career-wise. And then on the ecom side, we hired someone called Sham, who's like my number two, and she's the same. So she was like kind of running the product, a digital product team at BHS, and she had kind of big brand experience, and she was the equivalent. And I think what we realized quite early on was that both of them, and then a number of other people we went on to hire, if we didn't grow, those people just didn't feel challenged and they weren't bought in enough to want to stay with us. And I think we've kind of obsessed with retention since the start. And actually, there's been so many periods where Bethan in particular, so there's been, I can think of 2 or 3 meetings where Bethan has been like, right, I'm hiring 6 people. And I'm like, no, you're fucking not. That's going to ruin our culture and it's going to change things, because we were... At points, we were almost like cult-like, to be honest. Like all of our team would hang out at weekends, up until we were like 15 people, whatever. And I didn't want to lose that. And I think both Josh and I were like, well, we from the start, we said we wanted to be the best 10-person consultancy in the world, and we never wanted to grow bigger than that. And I would say that the people that we brought in pushed the growth, but in a good way. Like, yeah, I always say I attribute so much of where we ended up getting to Bethan and Sham, because otherwise it'd probably still be 6 people and me and Josh would be really happy with our output, but Vervaunt would be nowhere near as big and wouldn't work with the brands we work with.
So what changed then in that? I suppose, and I can only presume, you still have the mentality of small team, high effort, low churn, and just maximum attention to all your clients. But you've equally now got over 50, 60 people in the company.
So about 72 people.
So a lot changed. Something
like that. I think, to be honest, like over time, I just had to accept that. I mean, to be honest, I'd say my role, as much as, I'm MD, I've always been very protective over certain parts of the business. Nowadays, I feel like it's so proven that Bethan, Sham, a couple of other people in the business are so much better at a lot of the ops stuff, like understanding, when to hire in advance, all of that kind of stuff, that I just have almost no say anymore, which I'm okay with. And I've just had to, over time, get more comfortable with the idea of people leaving, the idea of, needing to push people a bit harder, all of that kind of stuff. But to be honest, I think the first time when Bethan was like, I'm going to hire 5 people, and if you don't like it, then, this isn't the right setup for me almost. And that ended up being like a massive catalyst for us being able to take on some of the brands that were kind of knocking on our door that we wouldn't have been able to take on without hiring. And then also another situation that was quite similar was Bethan wanted to run a grad day. And that was the equivalent as well. She was like, I want to hire 4, 5 grads. And then I was like, that's mental. And also, like, even the whole thing, I was not 100% comfortable with the idea of bringing in more junior people where you can't then just immediately assign revenue. But actually, a lot of those people and that grad scheme they've ended up being some of our best people. So I think all of that stuff, and it's funny because I feel like I'm going to talk about Bethan a lot because we're the opposite. We did like the personality tests, and she and I are like the complete opposites. But yeah, she's definitely been a big part of the media growth, and I think Sham's been the equivalent, but probably more around being present like externally and culture, and also kind of pushing the ecom team to grow as well. But I think she and I are very aligned that we don't want to be 15 people, we want to be 8 people, and we want to stay very good and still be able to kind of pick and choose the brands we work with.
I'm interested to know what that 5, 6 people was, that group, the department. What was that bottleneck team that she wanted to build that allowed you to scale?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was more, I mean, there's been various points. That was the first one, and I think that probably would have been, let's build our first, or like our second pod, essentially. So you probably would have had Josh and Bethan both being quite hands-on at that point. Bethan now wouldn't work in the product. She's more running the teams with someone called Tom, who's our head of paid and capacity management, all of that kind of stuff. But you would have had those two, and then probably like a couple of mid-level people and maybe like one junior. And then essentially, rather than hire like one more person into that kind of existing structure, it's like, right, let's hire one senior person that can then take ownership of a whole new pod. And that, it ended up working. And then now we've kind of continued to grow in that way almost. So kind of building out new pods. Like now there's more like every now and then we'll change the structure, which, sometimes goes terribly, sometimes goes okay. But yeah, that's kind of where, kind of how we started to then. And the other thing is we've just always, for our first 5 years, we were just always, backs against the wall. Like we'd get a really cool brand and I'd be like, we have to work with this brand. So like Ganni was one that we got, and like I love that brand. Loads of people in the business love the brand. And then we were like, we have zero capacity. And then it was like, how are we going to take this on? And then we kind of, just continuously had that cycle of like, bring someone in. If they're not good, it's a disaster. If they are, then it works really well. But that sounds like we have to hire in advance. And this will give us runway for like 5 or 6 clients, whatever. And then it's just always worked, even though on paper I was like, this is the wrong move commercially and team-wise. But yeah, it's always kind of worked out, I would say.
I'd like to expand on team and so on as well, specifically because you guys are so involved in the delivery side, presumably because you just back your own individual talents there as well. I do want to hold that as just as a seed to plant for later on, because I think there's a lot that we can unpack in team and culture and so on, and maybe some hiring mistakes that you've made as well. But whilst we are still kind of closely attached to the topic of growth, that Pangaia account, when that came in and they saw that explosive growth, how did you use and leverage that case study to be able to then, like, how did every other brand hear about that, for example? What tangibly did you do?
To be honest, I think a lot of people we've spoke to about this over the years, I think everyone agrees we could have done a lot more with it. So we talked about it, like if we were talking about clients, if we were, events, whatever else, we talked about Pangaia a lot. About a year in or 2 years in, we were kind of like, right, let's enter some awards or let's talk about it on LinkedIn. I think that was like, for a long time, it's the only case study we had on our website. But to be honest, I think when a brand, because I would say they were probably the number one brand in the world for hype at that point, like they were, and they were like a real kind of like, Gymshark level of growth. And I remember through COVID, I turned on, my wife was watching the Kardashians, and every single member was wearing a Pangaia tracksuit for like pretty much the whole episode. And like they were just so present that everyone was like, wow, these guys are growing ridiculously fast. Who is managing their media? And then people would like Google it, people would ask around, people would reach out to them. And yeah, it's all really organic, to be honest.
How would you, or why, if you were to distill it down to 3 core reasons as to why that brand blew up so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's really interesting because around this time, a load of other brands were doing really well. And I remember one of our competitors had a brand that was doing really well. And they, everyone was kind of attributing the growth to what they did. I think it was nothing to do with us. I think the media definitely helped amplify what they were really doing amazingly from a brand and marketing perspective, and also help them to enter new markets and potentially kind of show people that there were new product available outside of just tracksuits. But to be honest, the reason they blew up was timing was perfect. Like that has to be mentioned, even though I don't think they were a COVID brand, and a lot of people think they were, a COVID boom brand. And I think they were so well connected. And that was the big thing as well. And like everyone in that business, when we started working with them, was so sharp. And yeah, all the people were well connected, but the founder in particular was just so well connected to A-list celebrities. And I think they just got so much organic reach, and kind of connections reach, that they were just everywhere. And then I think what worked really well for them as well, they really struggled with inventory up front, and there was so much scarcity. Like people were so proud to have got their hands on a tracksuit, and all the footballers and everything else would be posting like organically, just because they'd managed to get their hands on a tracksuit, and that worked so well. And then by the time they managed to get their hands on like decent levels of inventory, the demand was there, and then they just kind of blew up.
Was there a moment when they were growing that you sat down as a team and were like, shit, we've now got a huge opportunity here?
I don't know if it was that. I think the moment where we were like, shit, this is like ridiculous, and we need to really make sure we do a good job and everything else. They were getting like, and I don't know how much I can say, but they were getting like £8 million, or the equivalent inventory, and this is when they were tiny, of like £8 million worth of sales in, and they were like, right, now we've got 3 months and we need to really think about how we're going to approach media and like new customer acquisition and everything else for this 3-month period. And we'd kind of built out the media plans and everything else, and it sold out in like 4 minutes. And we were just like, wow, like this is mad. And everyone internally were just like, fuck, like this is crazy. And I think I remember that point, we were just like, this client is going to go crazy. But yeah, really, I mean, to be honest, the sad thing about the Pangaia story is because they kind of went up and down. And I think, I mean, we still work with them at the moment, actually. We won't be working with them long term, but and by that sounds a bit odd, actually. So essentially they asked us to retender, and we decided not to do it just because it's such a different business. And I also think it's just good for them to have like a fresh perspective as well. We've worked with them for 5 years. But the only sad thing, I think, there's just so much change after that growth, and so many like big decisions, that maybe didn't quite work out. That, I think it's just kind of, it's just a bit of a shame that they haven't kind of been able to prolong that.
Do you think explosive growth in any company facilitates decisions that maybe aren't advantageous for the long term, and that are... I think
yes, and there's been so many brands that have done what they've done and then just kind of disappeared, and there's also a lot of brands that just can't maintain the hype and they become a fad and everything else. But I do think with Pangaia, because they had such good plans in like moving into new categories, there were some crazy high profile collabs they were going to do, and I think the problem was just because the team was changing so much, they'd build these plans. And this is like the leadership team, they'd build these plans, and then by the time they'd finalise the plan, the person would leave the business, and then it would be like, okay, let's spend 3 months building a new plan, and then they'd kind of get round to, signing everything off, and then that person would leave the business. And they just never really acted on a lot of the bigger things they wanted to do when they were at their peak levels of demand and like reach. And I think for me that was probably the biggest issue. And I think there's a lot more I think internally that they maybe didn't do perfectly from like an ops perspective, but I think that's kind of how I look at it from where I was involved.
Was there anything as you went through that growth period in that same kind of time where you were taking on new brands and so on that broke inside of the business as you tried to scale?
You mean in terms of like things that broke inside our business?
Yeah, inside of your company. Hiring.
Oh, loads. Yeah, like loads of different things. So I'm trying to think about how I kind of focus on some of those. I think to be honest, some of the things that I think have broke inside our business probably been more recently, or like over the last couple of years. I think we somehow managed to, because like everyone talks about different periods of growth and different team size changes where everything changes, and I think like the first one, which people say is like, I don't know, 10, 15 people, whatever, I think we managed to avoid a little bit by just kind of growing through it. I think probably one of the worst periods we've had as a business, I would say internally, was last January. And I think that was an interesting period because essentially we had grown a lot, and then approaching January, like, right, new year, we've got a lot of small clients that we essentially we were busy, like really busy as a business. So we were like, right, we're stopping all new business. We're not going to take on any new clients, and we're not going to entertain any new clients for a while. We're going to focus on our team and everything else. Then we were like, we're going to remove like our 5 smallest clients that we're just not the right fit for anymore. They could find someone that would do a better job, everything else. And then we went into January, and then we just randomly, and we hadn't really lost any clients for a long time, randomly lost 3 or 4 clients, and a couple of big ones, and like a couple of them were probably our fault, a couple of them were more just completely kind of macro things. 2 of them went into administration actually, and we were just like, fuck, we've got like 0 pipeline for the first time ever as well. Like we've always just had more demand than we could supply, which is something we've been super lucky with. And then we were like, we've literally just told everyone no, we don't have anyone, that really wants to work with us. We've essentially just removed or lost 8 clients, which is quite a big portion of revenue. And then also we've like made a load of changes in the team and everything else, which are really positive long-term changes, and I think worked really well. But it's like we are just in this very strange position. So then we kind of had to just make a lot of change. So, I mean, we did, to be honest, it wasn't bad. Like, we made up the revenue quite quickly, but it's more we put a lot of pressure on the team, I think, around new business, because we don't have dedicated sales people or teams. Everyone was kind of like working on, pitches and everything else. And then we're also like, because there's a lot of account changeover amongst the teams, it's just like a lot of change at once. And I think, that was probably one of the more difficult moments of Vervaunt, and this is all the paid side. And it was just 6 months of just change, to be honest. But I think overall, I mean, we learned a lot from it as well. I think one thing we learned is that if people move media agency, they're typically going to trigger that in around this time, which was really good. And we just learned a lot of what I think most agencies already knew, because I think, like I said to you before, I think all the way through we've kind of just had our heads down, and we've just been like, right, let's be the best at what we do and service our clients really well, and just kind of we're kind of like insular in that way. And then I think we just learned a lot more like mature agency things that kind of made us a bit more like a normal agency from an ops perspective, if that makes sense.
100%. January is always the highest time for churn, but also I think
we would have never known that, which is very naive.
I think, but in the highest time periods for churn are always the best time periods for client acquisition as well. It's like on the run up to November, Black Friday. On the September, October can be high months of churn, but also great months of opportunity where D2C brands at least want to move agency to capitalise. Yeah,
completely agree. But that was a good period for learnings, I would say. And I think this year, we're in such a bad position, and I think, we've improved a lot of areas in the business, and I think I think the big thing during that period, we just had no headspace in the business for like just continuous improvement. And like, I think what we've done well overall over the years has been like learning and like foster like shared knowledge transfer amongst the team, and like kind of fostering like newness and innovation and pushing the boundaries and whatever else. And during that period, I think it was just a very intense period where just a lot of change.
You and Josh are, as you say, heavily involved in the business and the delivery side of the company. As you expanded and presumably had to go through quite a lot of mental challenges in being able to relinquish that control, how did you distill what was in your brain to the team, and do you think you did that effectively?
Definitely not done it effectively, but I also think what Josh and I have in our brains isn't necessarily the right things to grow our business. And like, I think like sometimes I play down the role that Josh and I play, because I do think in terms of our overall direction, it's never changed. And like, we've always like over-invested, and like different people come into the business and said we've over-invested in team, and like we do a retreat every year, and everyone says do not take 70 people abroad for 4 days because this will go wrong, it's not good use of money, blah blah blah, like all these reasons, everything else. But we've always kind of stuck to, we want to invest in the team and also our clients, and we spend a lot of money like just going out for dinner with our clients, like doing exercise classes, doing like different things, and like we're quite close to our clients. And I think we've kind of always stuck to a number of those types of things, but I think neither Josh or I want to be close to the numbers, want to be thinking about how we grow the business, want to be thinking about like systems and processes and stuff like that, and that's never changed. And I think I look at Sham and Bethan, and other people. Like now we've got an FD and a head of HR, and Tom, our head of paid as well, is very strong on that side. And we've got a guy called Joho. I'd imagine we'll talk about him. He kind of runs Pulse and has been a big part of the growth of Pulse. But all of those people are so much better at those areas, and actually that's what they want to do. Like they want to improve and grow the business, whereas Josh and I, realistically, it's probably our biggest strength and weakness. We want to be like the best. I want to be the best ecom consultant out there, and Josh is exactly the same from a media perspective.
It's really interesting. It's a very rare and admirable kind of trait that you both have. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but it very much feels like neither of you are very commercially motivated and are very much in it for the love of the game.
We've had to change a bit, and we've obviously just gone through this kind of exit, which I'd imagine again we'll come to. So we've definitely had to change a bit. But I mean, to be honest, the amount of times people have got, like particularly Beth and Sham, have got so annoyed with us because we've just. I remember once we went to we did like a bit of an away day in Oxfordshire. And we've had lots of advisors over the years. We've been very quick to bring in consultants, and this person was like just trying to get us to focus on growth and like putting reporting in place, which we never had anything like that. And me and Josh were like talking to Sham and Bethan and saying we need to do this. And then I remember Bethan came to me and she's like, "Do you actually care? Like, do you act?" And she was annoyed and she was like, "I don't think you actually care about these numbers." And I was like, I do, but I didn't. Like, to be honest, I didn't care. And I was like, as long as I've only ever looked at one number really, which is just net profit. And as long as we're profitable and we're in a position to reinvest, I've always just been happy. So yeah, I think we were really fortunate with Bethan and Sham, and there's a lot of equivalent things that Sham's done from a cultural perspective. Like she was she drove a lot of our internal cultural things for a long time, and also partnerships, which is a big part of our business, and also operations. So for example, everyone said I was mental when we were 10 people. I was like, "Sham, here's the bank," and Sham's only been in the business for a year and she's never done anything with finance or anything else. I was like, "Sham, here's the bank. You go and manage anything to do with money. I don't want to do it anymore." And and she's been amazing at kind of helping us grow on that. And now we've kind of, brought people in for different aspects. But I think basically Sham and Bethan and Tom and Joho, those four people, we've just been really fortunate with, because it's allowed Josh and I to do the things that we actually care about and are motivated by, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. You talk a lot about investing back into the company. I know you guys are really hot on R&D and various different projects. You've got a really successful Shopify app for post-purchase
Census,
surveys. Talk to me about that. How do you make the decision to, we want to invest in these areas of the business without it becoming a shiny object that takes you away from the main thing?
I think one thing that's really lucky about Vervaunt, because I am a magpie and I'd say I'm pretty creative, very quick to try and do something new. But before we started Vervaunt, so I've done loads of different things. I've worked in-house a couple of times, but I've spent a lot of time in agencies, and I spent 3 years at a company called GPMD, a company we still work today. I was really close to the owner, a very good friend of mine. Kind of worked my way up to being a director in the business, left, did a startup called Audited, which is essentially a marketplace for audits delivered by people that worked mostly in-house doing freelance, and it was a really nice little business. But I kind of burnt out and it was really badly ran. And when I did that, I then merged it with GPMD again. And through that phase, I did a million side projects. So I had dropshipping sites, I had affiliate sites, I had a Magento module, loads of other stuff, and I was just doing so many different things. And I think there was just a point where I just became the most focused man alive, because I just made so many mistakes. And I always give advice to people in the industry around staying focused, because I see it all the time and actually I hope he won't mind me saying this, but Mark from GPMD has definitely been distracted quite a lot at different points, and I think he'd say that. And he's kind of put a lot of attention and money into things that then haven't come to fruition. I think I've just seen so many smart people, and he's one of the smartest people I know, do that, and it's had a really bad impact. So whilst we do definitely do that, and Pulse is an example, and we've got maybe 8 products in the business, we've definitely made sure they don't distract us. I think I think the thing that the R&D side has done really well has kept me and Josh motivated, to be honest. Like, I think that we've both really enjoyed building stuff. So Census, we had a guy called Liam in the business who actually was a big part of Vervaunt as well over the years, and he came in as like a technical consultant and moved his way up to technical director, and he's architected a lot of what we have. And then over time, so he left, did his own thing, and now works for an agency, and we've like kind of brought in different people. But Census, essentially, I did a lot of the roadmap and kind of asked for a lot of features and everything else, but he ran it. And then now different people in the business kind of run it. But I'd say it's still like a big focus for me. And then the equivalent on the paid side, so we've got Visualize, which is like, to be honest, and again, hopefully I won't get in trouble for saying this, but Pangaia, when we were working with them, they were using Smartly, which you probably know. And they were paying Smartly a lot more than they were paying us to manage the account. And all Smartly is doing, they're just going in and building these basic templates with pulling kind of data out of Shopify and creating nicer images for DPAs. And we were like, we can build that super easily. So we built an equivalent and we just gave it to all our clients. And then, we just kind of used that to push the boundaries. I think we were the first to do video in that when that became available. And then now we've got like different tools around creative reporting, got some agents. I think one of the big investments we've made on that side, actually we hired a team to put all of our clients' data into a data warehouse. And then we are now in a very good position internally to say what's going on in the US, like why is CAC changed, everything else. But all of that stuff, we've actually been quite good at not doing the work. And I think all of that, because Josh is like worse than I am with that stuff, and actually he is quite easily distracted. But yeah, we've done quite well bringing in the right resources to prevent us from getting distracted from our roles, which ultimately is client and product, really.
Have those tools that you've created over time, the various projects, become a good revenue driver
Absolutely
for the company?
not. No, definitely not.
Interesting.
No. I mean, there's been so many people in our business, and Beth Ann and Sham definitely have wanted to make them revenue drivers, and we've just never. I think that's where we felt it would be a distraction. So Census is now probably profitable. So I think that's probably made close to 100 grand now, and we've probably spent about 90 grand on it, something like that. And that's just, to be honest, we put it on all our clients, and it's got about 500 brands. It's got some massive brands using it. And then organically, they've recommended it to other people. But to be honest, a lot of the value of the tools, like the value for me with Census, like we've actually got a really good view because we can like look at the aggregated data. Like I can see when the spikes. So most people that use Census will ask the question, "Who are you purchasing for? Like, is it for you or is it a gift?" And I can see like gifting spikes, and we've got so much data around that, and we've got so much data around like attribution, and like we've got so much data around like what people say as a friction point when shopping. And to be honest, we don't really use it as much as we should. But yeah, the value to us, because actually we do, to be honest, we're not close enough to the numbers and not organised enough to know the total cost that it is to our business. But the paid ones in particular, we probably spend, I reckon we probably lose about 150 grand a year on just having those tools. But I think they're a big part of why, I think our clients love that we don't charge for them. And I think they're a big part of why people want to work with us as well.
Well, presumably, were they included in the roll up and sell?
Yeah, which is
did that sad. Amplify the multiple that you got as a business?
No, which is the saddest thing actually. Like when we, and again, like I mean, we can talk about like our motivation and everything else. I think what's interesting is like just starting this conversation is Josh and I think everyone in the industry knew we would be like the last people that would want to sell our business, and I think. One of the hardest things was that, essentially Pulse didn't really have a value. Census and the other tools didn't really have a value, but yet they're like, I feel like you could so easily take any of those and go and like create a lot of profit, because the way that an agency is valued is essentially just on EBITDA primarily, with like the odd higher like benefit from a multiples perspective because you've got a brand or like everything else. But to be honest, I think that was something we found really difficult. But actually coming to go through that process, is it all right to just move on to that?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think that was definitely a hard part of it. But like I said, we didn't want to sell the business. I mean, what we felt was we were at a really good point as a business, and like all those people I mentioned had helped us get to a really good point as a business. And then we were like, AI is going to really change this landscape, and we need to be 100% confident that agency multiples will come down. In order to retain our levels of retainer, everything else, we're going to have to work really hard, and we're going to have to invest a lot in what we're doing. And then also it's going to become more competitive across a number of areas. And it's not just AI. I think Shopify are having a really big impact on the services market as well. And I can definitely talk more about that. And essentially then we sat down and we had a few different conversations with people, and we were like, how can we keep going, maintain a lot of what we love about the business, but de-risk a bit, and also give us more cash, because we should have done New York years ago, and it was like it's going to cost us 250 to 500k to do it properly. And we were just like, we don't want to risk our money on this, and also it's a big distraction again. And we've tested it a little bit. Bethan did 3 months there, and it was a bit of a disaster for me and Josh, because everyone's coming to us instead of her because she's in New York. And there were a lot of risk around that, and also the product stuff, because we think we need to invest more in that to kind of continue to grow. And then we were like, let's do private equity. Like, that's a really good route for us, that we'll continue to have control of everything else. And the more people we spoke to, it's like, you two have got no chance in private equity, and it will change everything. And then we were like, let's bring in a CEO and do it. And then we just didn't really feel like that was the right route for us. It just didn't feel like we were going to be able to focus on like the team and everything else. So then we were like, spoke to a few more advisors. Who could we sell to where we could maintain a lot of what we've got? And they were kind of like, you can't really, but there's some really nice vanity names that you could sell to, and it's going to look great for you. And you could sell to these smaller organizations, and maybe they're aligned, but it's going to change everything else. And then around this time, so my second best friend was working for IDHL. So he sold his business to them 8-9 years ago. And to be honest, I think we've always felt like there's a lot of stuff in IDHL that we really respect, but it's a very different business to Vervaunt. As you'd kind of expect, it's private equity backed. They're 400-500 people. And there's some really good stuff in there, but it's just very different to Vervaunt. And I think they were changing a lot, though. Like, they'd brought in a new CEO, and he had completely changed a lot of things that I probably would have said were the contrast areas. And then he decided to leave. And then whilst me and Josh, I would speak to this guy every day, and we just chat about ecom and everything else. And he was like, right, I'm probably going to become the CEO of this company, and I want you to join us. And then he was telling me more about what he wanted to do, and who he wanted to acquire, and how they were going to enter the US, and even client said one, and changes he'd made to org structure and everything else. And I was like, actually, out of nowhere, this could be a really good fit. And we've got the trust of him, and realistically, I know he can structure a deal in a way that will motivate us really well long term, and will avoid, because I think what we wanted to avoid was the aggressive growth targets and the earn-out, the complexity around kind of balancing wanting, we basically didn't want to be incentivized to grow aggressively. And I think what we've managed to do with these guys is engineer a situation where we're a part of, those guys just continue to improve the product, really innovate in tech, push community. And I think there's a really good mission in the company to just go in the direction we want to go to. But equally, we kind of operate fairly independently, and we've got a lot of control over the P&L and how we invest and everything else. So yeah, I think whilst the whole process frustrated us that most of what we had invested in didn't actually add any tangible value from a numbers perspective, I think all that we wanted from a deal was to de-risk, give us an environment that we're happy to work in longer term and try and achieve more things at a bigger scale and protect the team. And I think it gave us that.
Coming out of that then, and presumably being able to do quite well personally as well, but also simultaneously not being like massively commercially minded.
Yeah.
How was that?
I mean, it's weird. So I think in terms of like the deal and everything else, we've invested a lot in the group. So we've rolled, kind of money into the group for sure, but we did take money out. And to be honest, I haven't thought about it, which is so weird. And yeah, it's actually been quite interesting. I think I felt very burnt out afterwards, just emotionally, because I think I have been obsessed with Vervaunt, like too obsessed with Vervaunt for 8 years, and I've spent every day just, obsessing over Vervaunt. And it's not that, I mean, if anything, I'm actually probably more obsessed now, but I just didn't expect that reaction. And actually, and when we were talking all the way through, I was really excited about like broader group level things and, acquiring a company in the US or really scaling that side of the business. But I think personally, I'm just more motivated to prove to people that, we're going to be a bit of an edge case in where, people go into a group and then, we want to continue to push areas forward and get better. And and also just continue to grow Vervaunt as like a brand. But yeah, I must admit, it's been an odd few months. And I've spoke to a lot of people that have gone through this. And I think actually it's probably pretty common. Like someone said to me, it's like you get PTSD when you go through this. And I definitely feel like I've gone through PTSD for sure. But I think like more recently, I've got a bit more comfortable with it. And also I think we learn quite a lot from IDHL because, like I say, I think we're pretty immature in certain areas, and those are the areas where they're super mature. So yeah, I think it's just been interesting. Like, I think I thought I would feel very different, and I think I thought I'd be like, right, I can go and buy a new car or something, and I've just not thought like that at all. It's just, I've just cracked on, which
Interesting.
is, yeah, strange.
Interesting. I wonder if that moment will come.
Yeah, maybe one day. I don't think it will, to be honest. Like, I think, one of, I think, again, a strength and a weakness for Josh and I is we're way more motivated about, like, our clients and people externally, like, what they feel about us and our product than we are about, making money.
Interesting. What changes now and after this sale? Like where is the business moving to?
I mean, to be honest, the business right now is going in the exact same direction. The only changes, so I think realistically, we're just looking at how do we go at AI and go at the fact that the service model and like landscape is changing so much. So I think we think New York's a really good route for us. Like, the types of brands we want to work with are over there and they like our client list, and organically we've got to like 20% of our business is from the US and New York mostly specifically. So I think that's a big thing for us, and you can charge more money there, and there's a lot of big clients, so I think that for both sides is important. And then I think the product side, and I think realistically we need to, I mean, you guys are pretty heavy in the creative space, I think, and we introduced that about 18 months ago. I think we've got a good offering, but I think we need to introduce newness in that area. So I think we're thinking about where does influencers sit, where does the creator piece sit, either in Vervaunt or in IDHL, and we can kind of capitalize on it. But that is something I think we basically just think we need to make sure that our service is constantly being modernized because everything's moving so fast. The product side, so we're doing a lot with AI on that side. So we're testing a lot of kind of creative kind of variation product in that space. We're doing a lot around the data that we've got in BigQuery, essentially being able to say this type of creative across 50 clients is doing X, like all of that stuff. And then I think, yeah, we're trying to build a lot more around reporting and automating the bottom 50%, essentially. So I think that's kind of it, really. And I think if you asked us 2 years ago, what are you going to do if you had money behind you or whatever else, I think we would have said this. And again, I think one of the frustrations that certain people in our business would probably have with me in particular would be like, okay, what's the strategy now? What's changing? It's like nothing's changing. Like we've just got to do these things that I think will help us stay in a position where we've still got the demand and our clients want to stay with us and spend the same amount of money with us.
What do you think about the impact of AI long term in agency?
I mean, do you know what? I think there's definitely going to be a big impact. I mean, I think so long term, I think that essentially the way that people work with service providers will just be very different. I think the things that will motivate someone to work with an agency will be category experience, kind of alignment with what they're trying to do as a business, enter new markets, move to full price, whatever else, strategy in general, and then I guess like creative direction, I guess. But I think unless you build IP, I think the retainers will be smaller, or you'll be paying a higher rate and there'll be less people involved. So I think that's kind of the overall direction of travel across not just the paid space, but also the ecom space as well. I'm way closer to like ecom and how people work with agencies on that side, and I think you're already seeing the build costs coming down, the retainers getting smaller, but I don't necessarily think that has to happen. It's more about, because people still have these budget lines, or at least some brands, they still got money to invest. It's more just, I think they want different things, and it's whether agencies can adapt and provide those things as well to keep the income the same, if that makes sense.
Do you think the bigger, longer established agencies in the e-commerce space are at threat from smaller 100%, agencies?
But they have been anyway for the last few years. I mean, to be honest, the growth of like your agency, our agency, a lot of that is coming from the larger agencies just not being able to keep up. And like Creative's a great example. You look at the big media agencies, they're all like pretty poor on that side, and now they're all kind of rushing to try and buy agencies, probably more so than like build teams, and they don't understand it as well. But yeah, definitely. I actually think when we talked about our next move initially, our biggest concern was we're at 70 people. We need to change a lot to get to 100. We're not going to be able to keep up with the small agencies. To be honest, that was what triggered it all. It was like, our attention is going to have to go elsewhere, and there's going to be things that distract our whole leadership team. So we need to put ourselves in a position where we can keep up, and that was why we were like, right. And actually, that was probably definitely as big as the de-risking piece. It was more like, this just can't really scale unless we do something that allows us to put the time and money into it.
Let's talk about Pulse.
Yeah.
So Pulse is it the biggest e-commerce?
I don't know if it's I mean, to be honest, the thing's gone nuts. Like, I mean, yeah, so it's pretty big now. So this year it'll be like 1,800, 2,000 people. I think the reason people like Pulse, so I grew up in the SEO industry, and I always talk about Distilled in particular. So I don't know if you would know them, but they got bought by Brain Labs. But back in the day, they were like, I mean, a lot of what we do, I look at them and I think they did this amazingly, and they were definitely an inspiration to us. They were like great at content, like really technical, deep content around the areas they did, and they ran very premium events that just had really good content, and that was one of the only events. And Brighton SEO I always loved as well, and Measure Camp and a few others. But I would go there and I would come back with like loads of notes, and I would spend my weekend, it was on a Thursday and Friday, literally just like testing things and everything else. And I was like, that just does not exist in ecom. Like, no one does that, and I don't think it exists in a lot of the digital kind of areas. And I was like, let's build that basically. And we did it the first time and it was going to be tiny. I think the venue had up to 300 people. And then we were like, no one's going to come to this, even when we got the registrations, because all of our clients came, everything else. And then the way that we positioned it, people really wanted to come. Then there were train strikes. So then we were like, no, now definitely no one's going to come. And somehow we still had 300 people. And that went really well, got a lot of hype. And a lot of people were like, right, we want to be involved in the next one. So then, and again, very similar to what I said before. So we've got this guy called Josh Hobson. I nicknamed him Joho. The whole industry knows him as Joho now. And I take a lot of credit for that. But so he essentially, again, very similar to Bethan and Sham, like forced the growth. He was like, I'm going to put like 100 grand down right now for a venue and we're going to have 700 people there. And I was like, no, you're not. Like, definitely not. It's too big a risk. And he was like, I've done it, basically. And then I was like, because my role in it is like, I will make sure that we've got the right topics, the right speakers. I'm essentially like the kind of editor for the event, and it's all kind of things that I find really interesting. So it's always been quite deep around like back office, around, so like kind of how people structure the back office systems, how they scale that, how people enter new markets, and again, like bring people in that can talk quite specifically around that. Yeah, kind of topics that you just don't necessarily see talked about. And then, yeah, it's grown organically from there. And then now it's a pretty big operation. There's a lot of money involved, a lot of risk around it, but I love it. He also pushed for 2 days, which I was like, this is stupid. A lot of people were like, that's a really bad move. And then last year, that was great because a lot of people just can't do 2 days. So I think we ended up with like, it was like 1,200 on one day and then like around 1,200 the next day, but there was like a total of like 1,700 people. So it actually worked really well. And then, yeah, we did New York. That was the most anxious I've ever been since we started Vervaunt because it was a new market, so much money involved. But we probably lost a little bit of money on that. Goal is to break even. At times we've made money, at times we've given the money to charity, at times we've used it for other events, made money on London, invested a lot of that into New York. And then, yeah, I think the risk with that was because there was lots more money involved. Sponsors needed to pay more money. And it just needed to be a success. I think that could have killed Pulse if that was a disaster. But that went really well as well in the end. And then, yeah, it's been a big part of our brand. I would actually say, like, sometimes I think I kind of act like, oh, we've never had a salesperson. It's all just been organic. But actually, to be honest, our salesperson is probably like Pulse and stuff like, and a few of the dinners and stuff like that. But equally, we don't take advantage of it. I remember there was it was last year where people were like, I've received like 5 follow-up emails from sponsors. Why does Vervaunt not do it? And I was like, I've never thought that. Just never thought of sending a follow-up to people. And I don't know if we'll ever do it or not, but yeah, we don't really capitalize on it. But I think people quite like that organic nature. And actually one of the things that helps Pulse, so when we first started Vervaunt, we had a lot of demand because I had a blog which used to get 25,000 visits a month, people looking for like, which platform should I use? How do I structure my catalog? How do I do all this kind of stuff? And it just gave us a lot of contact with brands. And then I decided to move from that and I started writing a newsletter, and we've never promoted this newsletter. Like, it was a client newsletter only, never promoted it. And then just organically people started adding friends and stuff. And then that's now like 3,500 people, so 3,000 people. And that's pretty mostly like ecom directors. And that, again, kind of gave us the foundation to get people to the event. And I think that, again, it's like indirectly, I guess that's kind of sales activity. It's just like it's a super organic email where it's, just trends we're seeing and stuff. But yeah, so I think basically we don't have a sales team, but we've got a very good growth director, and yeah, Sham's really strong around kind of that type of activity as well. So we're just very present and kind of doubled down on market.
Nice. What's the plan for this year for Pulse?
Bigger, but same venue. Bigger. I think there will be some newness. I think there's a lot that we still need to decide. So last year, like, because it ended up going really big and we ended up with like a surplus of money, Joho decided to spend it on, we got Bewitched, DJ Fat Tony, some guy from Steps, and a couple of other like really well-known people, a couple of like major drag queens. And I think that side we kind of got to follow through with this year as well now. So we've got to get some really good kind of entertainment. Speakers wise, so yeah, kind of similar profiles. So we've got some really nice brands like Cos and Anthropology and Fanatics and companies like that. I think content wise, I think I get really annoyed about AI in our industry, and particularly on LinkedIn, and like all the like scaremongering and people selling services that are quite generic. So we're trying to cover quite tangible topics around that. So we've got like the product director from World of Books talking about how they use AI specifically around catalog enrichment for 10 million products. And like stuff like that, like showing how they've used Claude and everything else. So I think we're going to introduce quite a bit of content like that. But yeah, it'll largely be very similar, I'd say. I think we're almost definitely going to introduce awards, which is quite controversial, because I basically just don't think there's an awards in our industry that is not... Basically, I think it's really hard to do awards, because if you enter, or if either of us enter some of the paid award, we can write absolutely anything. Like I could say, we've grown this brand 2 million%, and it's all because of this, but that you can't prove it. So I think what we're trying to do, so half of the categories will be like creative, art direction, front-end experience, and then the other half will be more like user experience, and it's all just things that you can kind of judge. But I think there's room for us to get the right judging panel, like good, high, like experienced creative people, good experience like digital directors, and yeah, create a bit of value in that. And like, yeah, so I think we'll probably introduce that.
Nice. When's the next event? What's the date?
13th and 14th of May, my wife's birthday.
Nice.
She's not
but that went down well.
No, it did not. Yeah.
If we were to like zoom out just from a high level perspective, and if you were to be starting the agency today from zero in today's climate, what would you do differently to what you did originally?
I think a lot of what I've said so far, probably it sounds like good in a way, and we've kind of done stuff like centered around product and everything else, but I actually think a lot of that comes down to lack of confidence. So I think as we've grown, I just don't think we've had, part of it is we've just not had the confidence to be like, right, we're gonna do this, and it's a big investment and a big risk, and it's gonna work. I think now I'd probably, and again, a lot of that's come from Sham and Bethan and Joho and others, but I think we'd be more confident, to be honest, in like investing. So yeah, I think, what would we do? I think I'd probably, day one, invest a lot in like, New York, invest a lot in product, invest a lot in content. And I think there's a phrase I heard the other day, I actually can't remember the phrase, but it's something along the lines of, basically if you do certain things, like the revenue will come. And I think I would invest a lot in brand, community and product and talent as well, to be honest, because I actually think, as we've grown, I think that, and a lot of the things that have gone wrong, you asked about things that have broke, have actually come down to like talent and bad hires, I would say. And I think that's probably pretty common in the agency space. But I think I'd try and be more intentional around, talent and really hiring the right people that can, because I think something that I have definitely not nailed as well, and I'm always jealous of people that have, is there's so many areas of our business where I've still got accountability, and it would be really nice to not have that. And I've, again, saying all the things I've said, I've probably kind of alluded to the fact that I'm not that accountable. And don't get me wrong, like all those people that I've said are super accountable, but there's definitely a lot of areas where I'd like to be able to put less kind of mental energy into them. And I think I'd probably think about how could we bring people in that might be product, for example, product director or whatever, or head of R&D. It could be sales, to be honest. They're definitely some of the more operational areas. To take accountability and bring someone in that's like able to kind of run with some of those areas.
Nice. Is there a specific service that, like, if you were to start again,
Yeah.
would you go straight back into ecom consultancy, or right now is there a service that you would be more leaning towards?
I think one thing I'd say, so definitely ecom consultancy. Like I'm not that interested in anything else. Like over the years, so many of our clients have asked us to do dev, asked us to do SEO, because I still know a lot of people from that industry because I kind of spent the first few years of my career in that. Analytics, whatever else. I probably wouldn't want to do any of those, to be honest. The only things we've deviated away from paid and ecom consultancy for has been affiliates, which has been nice. It's like really nice little part of our business, and we've got some nice clients and good people, but it's small and creative because you have to. I think you need that service and good people in that space. But yeah, I think I would definitely stay in ecom consulting and strategy. The only one thing that I quite like at the minute, so I've been doing a bit more like advisory stuff with SaaS companies, and it's all through Vervaunt. And like I've been on the Klaviyo advisory board, even though I know nothing about CRM. Done a bit of Shopify. There's a company called Klavu, which is a search company that just got acquired into like a bit of a roll up in that space, and I worked with them for 7 or 8 years. All the way through it, and I think more recently I've been doing a bit more of that stuff, and I really enjoy it. So I think if I was to get sacked, let's say, by Lewis, I think I'd probably want to do like 70% ecom consultancy, but like some strategy and product work with SaaS companies maybe as well.
Interesting. Love that.
Yeah, I don't think I'd change too much, really. I don't think there's anything else that really like gets me excited.
Cool. It's been a pleasure, man.
Great, yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, thanks for having me on.